Okay, so where are we? I believe we are at the time where the young ministers, or what I'd say, according to the scripture, the young disciples or the young prophets, they're not waiting. They're not patient. And even though the man of God does not specifically tell them to wait or to be still, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be looking for the man of God's wisdom. We see in the scripture where several times where young ministers or young prophets get in trouble because they don't wait upon God's timing, God's order. And I was actually going to put this message off, but I felt it's very timely, it's significant to the hour we're living in. We see where the young men got ahead of the prophet. And where the man of God had to help. Didn't have to help, but he was asked to help. And they asked the man of God to go with them. Are you listening? It was their plan. It's what they wanted. But they didn't exclude the man of God. Maybe they wanted him around just in case they needed him. Just kind of maybe a net, so to speak, to catch them. At any rate, they wanted the man of God to be with them for some reason. And so Elijah, or should I say Elisha, wasn't it Elisha? Elisha went with them. And sure enough, they got in trouble, and they needed the man of God to help them. We don't see the man of God saying to them, no, you decided you wanted to do this on your own, you figure it out. No, we don't see that. We see the man of God helping. And in many cases today, the men of God, the true men of God, are patiently waiting for somebody to ask them for help. Ask them for direction. The men of God, the true men of God, are not leaning to their own understanding. These are seasoned men that have learned that they are not the answer. They have learned that simple but yet so profound lesson where Jesus said, without me, you can do nothing. We even see in the Scripture where this man of God that was asked to help, Elisha. We see in the Scripture where when he finally did receive the mantle, he didn't know what to do with it. And instead of finishing what Elijah had begun, completing what Elijah had started, Elisha went backwards across the Jordan and back where Elijah had been. He should have stayed in the promised land and continued. But he had no teaching, no training. He didn't have any leadership. God used Elisha because Elisha was willing, mainly. Because Elisha was humble. The Scripture says that Elisha washed the hands of Elijah. So we see that Elisha, he was a servant. He had a servant's heart. And even though Elisha was chosen by God, used by God, he still didn't have the training. He didn't have the leadership. Not sure altogether where Elijah got his from. Maybe God himself. But there's no question in my mind that Elisha should have went forward and not backwards. And I believe that this generation, the church, being led by the young people, are going backwards and not forward. It's going to take a price to go forward. It's going to cost something. You're not going to go forward without a price, without a fight, without a struggle. There's going to be opposition when you go forward for God. I'm not so sure that this generation of young ministers are willing to pay the price. To go forward. There is really no indicator in Scripture letting us know that Elisha was not willing to pay the price. But why? Why didn't Elisha continue? Why didn't he continue? Where are the old men? Where are the men of God? Where are the prophets of God today? Where are they? Where are the leaders? Where are the aged men? Where are the weepers? Where are the mourners? Where are the men of God of this hour that will weep between the porch and the altar? Where are the men of God of this hour? When they look and see the condition of the ministry today, that they would weep. Where are the men of God that would warn of coming danger? There's plenty of young men. There's plenty of young ministers trying to somehow fill the shoes of their forefathers, trying to somehow fill the shoes of the prophets before them. But they don't know how to. They don't even know where to begin. And they're just doing their best. And their best is not good enough. Now, I'm not saying that, like Israel said, our young people are going to be destroyed. And then find out that it was the ones saying the young people would be destroyed are the ones that were destroyed. And the young people went into the promised land. I'm not saying that the young people today can't even be victorious in God. I'm not saying that. I am saying this, and I'm saying this with the spirit of Caleb and Joshua. I'm telling you that the young people of this generation, even if there is not a leader to lead them in, that they must come to the place where they at least will look for a man of God to lead them. Where's the wisdom today in the young people trying to do it on their own? Just because there's not a man of God to say to you, wait, be patient, don't get ahead, doesn't mean that there's not a man of God waiting to be called upon. What does it need to take? What has to happen for the young people, for the young ministers to quit and stop and wait and ask for help? What's it going to take? What's it going to take for the young people, for the young ministers, and all their vigor, and all their excitement, and all their zeal? What's it going to take for the young people, the young ministers, to realize what's ahead, to realize that they can't make it alone? They have no idea of the danger that's ahead. No idea of what is ahead. No idea that if they embark upon going forward in God, that they are going to face some enemies. And they're not going to be very kind. Are you listening? The devil has no mercy, no compassion upon ignorance. He doesn't care how naive you are. He doesn't care if you're not seasoned. He'll chew you up and spit you out. The scripture says he's going to swallow up some folks with a flood. Oh, I can do it. I can handle it. The young ministers of this hour don't even know, don't have a clue what they're doing. They think that the ministry is standing behind a pulpit and preaching a message. That's what they think the ministry is. There's no humility. absolutely no brokenness, no humility, no sense of responsibility. It's trying to strut themselves, strut their talents, and there's no brokenness. There's no humility. There's no burden. That's what's wrong with the young people. That's what's wrong with the young ministry of this hour. They have no humility. They have no burden. They don't carry a burden for the lost. They do not carry a burden for the ministry. And you say, well, why are you such a downer, Brother Joseph? I'm concerned. I'm concerned when I see young ministers thinking that they have what it takes. They would not stand a chance if God was to allow the devil to move in. Do you understand? There's only a few good men left in the land. There's only a few real battle axe ministers left. That haven't been washed up. God has a few prophets in the land. They've been seasoned. They know what it is to come up against Jezebel. They know what it is to face the devil. They've been through the ringer already. No, there's only one thing they really long for, and that's for some young minister to ask them for help. Really. A real true man of God knows, even when a young minister comes to him for help, he knows if he really wants help. And many times, a seasoned man of God will make you to think he agrees with you, even though he doesn't. Because he knows that you're not going to listen to him anyway. Are you listening? One of the greatest dangers in the ministry is to think you're doing God's will and you're not. I think the greatest wisdom I have learned in the few years I've served the Lord is how to wait. And do nothing. Do absolutely nothing. Doing nothing is probably one of the greatest lessons for a minister to learn. Especially when Jesus said, without me you can do nothing. Now I know this message is not popular.